Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good evening and welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee, and I'll be with you for the next hour here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in, 310-441-0555. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, so you can call in with any questions related to clinical psychology, including any emotional or psychological issues, parenting issues, and relationship issues as well. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram or like my page on Facebook to get updates on the show or suggest topics or books for the program. And the shows are uploaded at the end of each week to my SoundCloud page and podcast on iTunes. Again, our studio number 310-441-0555. So usually Mondays I do the book summary, but today I won't be doing the book summary because I'm going to be joined on Wednesday by the author of the book of the week from last week, Dr. Neda Makbouleh, who wrote the book The Limits of Whiteness, Iranian Americans and the Everyday Politics of Race. And I already, even though we'll talk about it on Wednesday, highly recommend this book really to anyone, but especially if you are Iranian and even more so Iranian American, because it talks about the experiences and also some of the historical background related to race, discrimination, and the experiences of Iranian Americans. And it's really fascinating. I basically finished the book, we just have the appendices left. So did get to complete it to give you my own opinion on it before I'm joined on the show Wednesday to talk about it with the author Neda Makbouleh, but highly recommended. The Limits of Whiteness. It was just great to read a book that talked about the Iranian American experience in a sometimes personal way, because she interviewed 80 some odd Iranian Americans and has their experience throughout the book, but also written from a scientific research type of a perspective as well. So it was just really great, and very much looking forward to having her on the show. So tune in Wednesday afternoon for that show at 12 noon, where I'll be joined by Neda Makbouleh to talk about the book The Limits of Whiteness, Iranian Americans and the Everyday Politics of Race. And I'll also announce the book for this week that I'll talk about next week. It is Marriageology, The Art and Science of Staying Together by Belinda Luscombe. Or Luscombe, I'm not exactly sure how to say that. Marriageology, so basically kind of like a play on the words, but like the study of marriage, the art and science of staying together. So I'll read that and share that with you next week. Wanted to start off today talking about giving. It is what people sometimes call the holiday season, depending on what holidays and holy days you celebrate. We talk about the holiday season and people are giving. Also, it is the end of the calendar year, and so because of tax reasons, sometimes people become a little bit more giving because they want to get potential tax breaks or write-offs and things like that. So people tend to give a little bit more, and of course gifts and all these things, and even just feel like people are in a more generous mood. These things have cultural context, and also behaviors are contagious. So when you see other people doing things, you're more likely to do them as well. We are social creatures in that way. So you just feel that spirit of giving is around. And so I wanted to talk a bit about that. Also related to that, we wanted to announce again the Radio Hamra toy drive that we were doing. If you want to bring toys, please do so here at the Radio Hamra studios. You can either send them in. I know some people do mail them, but especially if you're in the area, come by 1762 Westwood Boulevard, Suite 330, Los Angeles, California, 90024. And that's for the Mattel Children's Hospital. And the gifts must be unwrapped and completely unused, brand new, so that they can be given to the kids there. So you can hopefully brighten the day and the holidays of someone who might be sick, a child dealing with something they truly, of course, don't deserve, but hopefully you can give them a little bit of love. So in that spirit of giving, I wanted to talk about giving, but also the spirit of giving, or what that really means or is, or some thoughts on that. Because as always, with anything we do, and the focus of this show being a psychologist, I'm always wanting people to think a little bit more deeply about not just what they're doing, but why they are doing it. And our intentions are always even more important than the actual actions at the end of the day. If you are giving to someone because you want to later manipulate them, then that act of giving or whatever it was you did in that giving is actually much worse than doing nothing at all. So we always want to look at our intentions and really evaluate, why am I giving something? And there actually is a quote or a verse in the Bible that actually I really like related to this, where essentially it's saying, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And it's talking about when you're doing charitable work or giving. So don't sound trumpets. That's in the verse before it. When you're giving something, just give. And even when it says, do not let your um, left hand know what your right hand is doing, it means even to the point where you are not giving yourself that credit, or at least that's how I see it, that you're so humble about it or so detached from your action and getting attention or praise from it, even you are not giving yourself recognition in that way. And so when we really give, it's just to give because we think it's the right thing to do. We think it's the right action to do. So we always want to evaluate why we're doing something. And a lot of times we feel like we have to give or we have to do something. That's very different than when we give really with the intention just because we think it's right and to be generous and to give to someone else. And of course, some people will argue, well, it's always selfish because at the end of the day, even if you're giving for those reasons, it makes you feel good. And so because of that, it still makes it selfish. But I get some of the merits of that argument, but at the end of the day, then you can't do anything for any good reason. Everything we do is for a bad reason because it makes us feel good. I'm sure people would say there's a difference between stealing money because it makes you feel good and giving money to a charity or giving your time to a charity because it makes you feel good. So we can't use that, I think, as an index of what's going on. Now, yes, if you're doing it to get approval or if you're getting it to get attention, that is something different. And this is becoming more of an issue now, especially with social media. Before, people would do things like donate anonymously. Uh, that was one distinction, or put their name on something. Now with social media, people give and they post pictures or videos of themselves giving. And I have mixed feelings about this. And again, it goes back to the intention. I generally don't like the way it looks when people do these things, showing themselves in like a photo opportunity or a video to show what they're doing, because at times it appears that they are doing it for the attention or to look good or to get that positive feedback from people to show them, hey, look what a good guy or good girl I am. And that I don't think is a good reason to give. And sometimes it feels artificial in that way. It doesn't feel very genuine. So I usually have a bit of a negative reaction to people posting things that they're doing. However, at the same time, there's two sides to it that I can see in a positive way. One is at times people bring attention to matters that should get attention. So there's some kind of injustice, there's people suffering, there's people that need help. And so by showing themselves giving to that, whether it's organization or people that are suffering, whatever it is, they are bringing attention to something which can be good so that other people can help. So there are people who are suffering in some region of the world. You show that you're there or that you are helping out in some way. It could bring attention to people of a problem they don't know. And then related to that, as I mentioned before, behaviors are contagious. So if you see that people are giving, and if everyone sees that people are giving, as much as we might think, well, I should think for myself and I shouldn't be affected by other people, we know that's not true, or completely not true, I should say, in the sense that we're not affected. We're all affected. We can't be completely unaffected by others. So we know it does have an effect. If you find out that no one is giving, you'll be less likely to give. But if you find out that almost everyone is giving or doing things, you're much more likely to do that. So when people post things, it can encourage this contagion of giving, that people see, oh, others are doing things, others are volunteering, others are donating to charities. It can have that positive effect. So I do have some of those mixed feelings. I really think it depends on the way people post things. Is the attention being put on you for being the good person, or is the attention being brought on the act of giving and on the people who you are helping even more than you? Usually, I think most posts are about the person trying to get that attention, and it's tough where to draw that line. And this is again where it comes back to intention, and only you can know what and why, or why you're doing what you're doing. And we should all think about that. It's easy to think, oh, I'm doing a good thing, so I'm doing a good thing. But we want to think of that why. Now, I did want to talk a few minutes about another aspect of giving or doing things for others that comes up, and that's our feelings about their reactions to what we do or what we give. So sometimes people will say, well, if you care about the reaction, that shows that you were doing it for the wrong reasons. And I can see some of the where people are coming from, and even I've thought this way. But it's actually, I think it's more complicated than that, or there's more to it than just that. Because I think in a way we can separate the actions. Of course, we do have to look at our intentions, but first you do something and you think, okay, I'm going to go give this food to that person because they are hungry. And so that's your action, and you think it's the right thing to do, let's say, and you go do that. And then now you give it to them, and let's say they yell at you, or they get mad at you, or they say something mean, or they throw it at you. You might have a reaction to how they respond, or they take it and say, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. You could have a positive feeling about that too. So we have to at times separate those things. They're definitely related. They definitely affect each other. It definitely could be that if just your intention is one thing, that's going to affect how you think about their response. But at times we have to think about those different things. If you pick up your friend from the airport because they ask you for a ride, and then when you drop them off, they say, whatever, I wish you didn't pick me up. I don't like you anyway, or whatever, something mean. You might not like the way they're responding to what you did. It doesn't mean you only did it to get some positive response, or you only did it to make them see you a certain way or anything like that. You can have a feeling about how they respond, and they don't necessarily have to be tied in or one and the same. Because people will sometimes say, you're counting the number of times you did this, so it means you didn't really do it with a good heart, or you care that I'm not appreciating what you did, so clearly you only did it to get my appreciation. And that's not necessarily true. If you do something for someone and they respond in a rude way, or they don't even recognize what you did, it doesn't feel very good, and that's understandable. So we can think of what we have done, the action, and our feelings about their response in some ways as separate but related things. And so sometimes they can also inform what's going on. So let's say you go give food to someone and they react in a negative way, and you do it a few more times to different people and you get a similar response. You might start to think about what you're doing. Am I doing it in a way that makes people feel uncomfortable? Or am I crossing some boundary that I'm not thinking about? I just think I'm giving, but they might feel like I'm going into their space. And sometimes that happens. People give to people in a way that doesn't think about the other person. They think, I wanted to give you this. And the person's like, I don't want it. And, someone might say this is a little bit more extreme, but someone just starts giving you a massage because they say, I thought your back was sore. And you say, I don't want it. And they keep massaging you because I want to, because I love you. That doesn't feel very good because they're not respecting your boundaries and your space. So we can pay attention to the reactions people give us to what we do. We definitely should, because that can help us and aid us in our future behavior or think about what's going on. But again, to have a feeling about how they react, I don't want people to think that necessarily means you had to have had bad intentions or your only intention was their reaction. You can do the right thing and then pay attention to how they react and have a feeling about that, but it doesn't mean you only did it for their reaction. Now, if based on their reaction you never do it again, that might be related to, you might have done it more for the actual reaction or response that they have, that it's not just about doing the thing. So when we think about being generous, we think about giving. As with all things, we want to evaluate the why. Why am I doing what I am doing? And also, I think it's important to keep in mind that if you do have a feeling about someone's reactions, that doesn't necessarily mean you had bad intentions. And if you're on the other end of it, think of that too. If someone doesn't like how you respond to something they do for you, don't make that seem like that means they had bad intentions or didn't do it at all for you. They might have a reaction to that. We sometimes try to want or pretend that we should have no expectations, and I get the overall mindset of trying to have less expectations, but I think it's impossible to have no expectations. If you, let's say, brought over all these things for someone and then brought them and they barely looked at you and said, okay, put it there and leave, you would have a reaction, okay, that was not very polite, or they didn't even appreciate what I did. Again, it doesn't mean you only did it for their reaction, but you might have a feeling to their reaction, which is understandable. We want to recognize them as separate things, but see how they're related, but also always keep in mind we want to look at the why. Why did I do what I did? Why am I doing this quote unquote generous thing? I say quote unquote because you might look at it and realize I wasn't really being generous. I was doing it for attention or approval. Or actually, it was a genuinely generous act. And that's something that you could understand and then help you understand more about yourself as well. So, in the spirit of giving, we always want to think about why we're giving and how we're giving and not just stop at the action itself. All right, let's go to a commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's go to a caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Hey, doctor. How's it going?
Good, thanks. Thanks for calling.
So I'm having a dilemma right now where I'm trying to decide where to go to school.
Okay.
So I've done a year and a half at the University of California, Berkeley, studying economics.
Nice.
But I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, so I'm paying out-of-state tuition. And my dad was recently laid off from work this past summer. So I can't really finish my degree without going into debt about $140,000. So I have applied to transfer to the University of Georgia and study finance over there, so similar major. And that would be almost no tuition, so I would graduate debt-free over there. But I wouldn't have the same job opportunities coming out and, just not the same opportunities. And for what I want to go into, which is investment banking, it's much more likely that you'd get a good job out of Berkeley than you would at UGA. So I'm just trying to decide how would I weigh those options and if you have any advice for me.
Yeah, that's tough. Obviously they're both good schools. Berkeley is a great school. And you'd be making the sacrifice for a financial reason and also related to your family. It seems like you don't want to put more of a stress or burden on them. And so whatever you decide, although you're considering your family and considering a lot of things, you really want to make sure you feel like it's your decision and you're going to own it 100%, including maybe owning the debt if you have to do that. But owning the decision as in if you decide to go back, let's say, to UGA to be close to stay in state, that you're going to take that as your decision and your path. Or if you decide to stay in Berkeley and get some debt, you'll accept that as well. Because what I see happen at times with families, and all families have this, but especially in Iranian families, we can feel pressure from parents or other people to make a certain decision. They make a decision, let's say, to go to a school, and they feel like they did it for their parents. Then when they face the challenges and stress that come with that decision, they are mad at them and resentful for them for whatever it is. And sometimes they even give up because they feel like I didn't want this stress. So either one of these options you take are going to be, in a way, good because they're two great schools, but they're going to have their own consequences and stressors that you're going to deal with. And what I want for you is to make sure whatever one you decide, you own it. First of all, you make it as your decision, and then also you own it as your own decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So where are you leaning right now? Where are you at in the thought process?
I'm really leaning more towards Berkeley because I just feel like if I don't go back, I'm going to end up regretting it a lot. But at the same time, the whole financial burden on my family is pretty big. And also, there's no guarantee that it will pay off. You can get a lot of good jobs out of UGA. Maybe it's just the likelihood that you're going to get the same level of jobs is lower. So it's kind of a risk-benefit analysis sort of thing.
Yeah.
And but really, I'm leaning more towards Berkeley. I only have, I want to say, maybe a week to decide, though. So
Okay.
I'm really back and forth.
I see. Yeah, you're. It's funny because pros and cons and weighing those cost benefit. That's a lot of what finance. You have to do a lot of that anyway as part of the work, right? So you're trying to see if this investing in yourself and in education, which one makes more sense. So this is like your first big decision when it comes to finance.
Yeah, exactly. First big investment.
Yeah, it's a pretty big one. But like I said, I think either way, you're going to make it work. So, I don't think it's one is going to be good and one's going to be horrible or anything like that. But I think it is important to pay attention to what you did say about you want to go to Berkeley. And I like the idea of betting on yourself in this sense of as far as when it comes to the financial investment. I don't know the difference between the job market of when it comes to finance, going to Berkeley and graduating from, I'm assuming, Haas or the undergraduate part of Haas Business School or UGA Finance. I don't know how different your prospects are. I think it would be important for you. We can talk about the psychological stuff, but as far as the professional stuff, you probably want to talk to people if you haven't already within the field, if you have access either through your professors or any other way, because they can tell you, okay, yeah, this makes a huge difference, or maybe it doesn't make that much of a difference. And along with the financial side, there is the personal side of either being in Berkeley or being at home. I'm sure both have their own pros and cons as well. That I don't want you just to think about the financial side. You need to, because that's something, but to not think of it just as a financial decision,
Right. Yeah, so I mean, to be closer to home would definitely be a lot easier for me. But, I was thinking, just go to Berkeley for 2.5 years, suck it up, do the work, and you'd probably be better off in the end. But, again, yeah, it would be no doubt more comfortable to be here at UGA, and I have a lot of friends over here already, so there's that as well. But I do have friends there, so I don't know.
Do you have your parents given you any input or any pressure when it comes to the decision?
No real pressure. They support me either way. I know it would definitely be easier, though, if I were here. My mom would love me to be here, closer to home. And obviously there's the financial aspect as well.
Right. So, you said you have a lot of friends there too. Do you like being at Berkeley?
I do, but most of the time, not particularly, actually. It's fun sometimes, but usually, I would say generally I don't prefer Berkeley.
Okay. So really, it's mostly just the educationally, you feel like it'll set you up better in your career.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't like, this is your second year at Berkeley?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And so you've been, a year and a half, but you don't love it there on the social side, or being in the Bay Area is not something
not particularly that appealing to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a tough, as always, pros and cons. And pros and cons, I think Benjamin Franklin had, I forgot the name for it, but when he talked about making a pros and cons list, it's not that revolutionary. Maybe revolutionary is an interesting word for Benjamin Franklin, but putting weights on them, because sometimes people just list them as numbers. So you have 4 on one side, 3 on the other. You should pick the one with 4, but the weights matter, of course, of how much how much they affect you. Those different things. So, I'm sure you're writing them all out. It's interesting, though, your initial reaction is to go to Berkeley, even though you think you'll be more comfortable, or I don't know if it's the happier is the right word, in Georgia. And so I don't know if it's just the opportunity. You feel like you deserve that in a way to be at Berkeley, even if it's harder. I'm not sure if that's what it is, or just really the future.
I think a lot of it is just is that, and it's also just feeling like maybe I'm throwing away something big, something that could be life-changing, or something that could change the trajectory of my life versus just going back and doing what's easy and staying home.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I mean, easy is a tough one, because sometimes easy can be good. I don't want to say it's always worse, but a lot of times it's taking an easier way or the more comfortable way can be worse for us in the long term. And have you talked to people about how different the prospects are from Berkeley or Georgia?
Yeah, I've talked to some friends, some of my family here as well, and everybody says something different. I have friends who graduate from Berkeley and didn't do much with their degree, and I have others who got great jobs. So there's different points of view.
Sure. And at the end of the day, you're going to, make with your degree what you will. There's some things where it does make a big difference. Like I know with law school, for example, I know you're talking about undergrad, but it can make a big difference if you're coming out of a top tier law school or a lower tier, law school makes a huge difference in the job prospects. But again, you can go to whatever school and make something yourself. And I don't know with finance, I know they do usually come and recruit people from when it comes to finance. So I'm not sure how different the opportunities are, but at the end of the day, it is going to be what you make of it. You can go to the best school in the world, and then if you don't work hard and follow through with a lot of things, you won't get anywhere. And you can go to a good school, and if you work really hard, you'll make meet your potential, so to speak. So it's interesting to me that your first leaning was towards Berkeley, but then when you talk about it, it seems like you go towards Georgia, and which is
Yeah.
kind of like a gut instinct or gut feeling compared to like when we think about something. There's this. It's kind of it's in some ways silly, but I think also interesting. People say flip a coin, and then see what you're hoping for it to land on. Like say heads is Berkeley, tails is Georgia. You flip a coin, and in that moment, your gut kind of tells you what you want more, what you prefer, because you'll see that you have a desire for it to land one way or the other. So you could try things like that, but it could be that this stuff could be hard because sometimes when we say emotional, it sounds like we're saying irrational, but it could be something that
Right.
you're feeling. Gut feeling it could be something more internal, like which really is taking in a lot of things where it'll feel more right to you to be at Berkeley. And then when you think about the logistics of it, Georgia makes more sense. So it pushes you that way. It reminds me of research they've done where they say, for example, tried, I think it was like on jelly or jam, and they had people taste it and then rank how tasty they were, how delicious different ones were. And when they just asked them to give a quick rating, they would actually do as well as professional food tasters would do. But when they said before you judge it, describe why you like it or what you like about it, when they try to logically explain, they become actually worse in rating things. They actually got it more. I mean, it's hard to say right or wrong, but using the food critics who are professionals as the baseline, they weren't as good at determining it. So sometimes when we ask for the logistical things or try to describe it, it's harder to really get a sense of it. But I also can understand that when you think of it that way, it can sound like we're saying just make a decision based on whatever feels right in the moment and don't think it through, which I don't think is good either. But I would pay attention to that initial inkling and really try to understand what Berkeley means to you, what you feel like. I think you also said it in a good way. What are you giving up? Because not only are you looking at what you're choosing in this case, it's very important to pay attention to what are you giving up and what that's going to feel like. Because at the end of the day, you're going to go to a great school. That's for sure. But the feeling of, okay, did I give up Berkeley, which maybe, I don't know, even out of high school, if it was a dream school for you or other things like that, that could feel like you're giving up a lot too, not just about what you're choosing. Actually, let me ask you about that. Was Berkeley, was there some, did you really want to go there? Was it something you really wanted to do?
It was kind of a reach school. They had a great economics program and business program, so I applied kind of off a whim. And when I got in, I just felt like I had to go. And yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
Okay. And then was there a feeling like experience that you had of, okay, it's like this dream school, I'm going there, and now that you've went there, it hasn't lived up to that, or not really?
I think there's a little bit of that. I think it was good for a little while, and then I don't know, just kind of went a little bit downhill, and then I didn't have the greatest semester last semester, and so it kind of changed my perspective a little bit, and yeah, I'm just in a different place from where I was when I first got in a little bit.
And you mean greatest semester academically or more on the personal social side?
I would say probably a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
I got pretty sick, and then I had doctors were worried. I had some CT scans and stuff done, and then they were thinking it was lymphoma, so I came home for a little bit. Got better, but yeah, it was just not the best semester for me.
Yeah, that sounds pretty stressful. So that the lymphoma was a false alarm?
Yeah, it was some sort of virus, or they thought maybe it was mono or something. They never really figured out what it was.
But I mean, that must have been scary for you to hear lymphoma. I don't know how long you were waiting.
Definitely.
How long were you sitting with that?
So I was getting sick for about 3 weeks, where I was just fatigue during the day, but at night I would have really high 103, 104 fevers
Oof.
and sweats and chills. So, yeah, doctors couldn't really figure out what it was. It happened a lot over winter break, and then it was going away by the time I went back to school. It was gone, and then it came back about 2 months later, and I actually medically withdrew, and then my father got laid off that summer. So I just was rethinking everything.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot to deal with all at the same time. So I could see how that can also have a feeling of things are kind of unsafe or so much is going on. It's just better to be home, like be closer to the
Yeah.
home base. So I could see that. Do you feel that pressure at all that your parents need you there? If your father being laid off, he needs you home?
No, I don't feel like he
Okay.
needs me home. I just don't want to put any added pressure on the family, especially if I don't feel like it's necessarily worth it.
Yeah, that's well, that worth it. It's a tough thing to put a value on because
Right.
it could be worth a lot, and it's tough. Sometimes we feel like our parents can't handle something, but they can, or not that we should add stress to their life intentionally, but that we want to not make a decision just because it might not be easiest on them if it benefits us. So I think it's important for you to think about that, and maybe they don't explicitly tell you there's a pressure, but you might feel a pressure to be there for them or not make it harder on them. Do you feel like the what's been going on at home, they've been under a lot of pressure, not from you, but just in general?
Um, no, I think we're pretty comfortable right
Okay.
now. Financially, it's not a big problem, but I feel like it could be down the road, especially if my dad, he's about 64 right now.
Hmm.
If he has trouble finding a job or whatever,
Yeah.
then it could definitely be difficult.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I definitely don't want anyone to make this decision for you, and definitely not me. So it's gonna be for you to think about these different options and really think about, like I said, not only just what you're getting, but what you're giving up. Can you said you have to make the decision in a week, so you can't go and finish off the year at Berkeley and then decide to leave?
So I've already been accepted to UJ for a spring transfer. So as of right now, I'm registered at both schools.
Hmm.
I basically just have to cut the cord on one of them
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before classes start, and I need to start looking for housing as soon as possible. So, yeah, basically as soon as possible, I need to make a decision.
Okay. Yeah, and that's tough. I'd say take some time with it, even like just clear your mind, as much as you can. Go for walks or whatever it is that works for you to clear your mind. Think about the pros and cons. Take the decision very seriously, but also keep in mind that whatever you decide, what's really going to matter is what you do after the decision anyway. So if you take your talents back home, that will mean that you'll have to, do well there. Or if you stay at Berkeley, you'll have to make of yourself there as well. So take it seriously, but once you make the decision, also, I would say go forward with it and just know there's going to be challenges, like I was saying before, either one, and just accept that as your path now and just make it happen. But after that, it's going to be up to you to make good of it. But the decision itself, it's going to be one part of many parts that you're going to have to do in the rest of your life.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you,
All
doctor.
right, take care. Bye. All right, going to our last commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. We'll be right back. Welcome back. And so the previous caller, wish him the best in making that decision between two schools. Life will give us many of those kinds of decisions where we have to pick sometimes between two things, sometimes between more. And making decisions is a really tough thing to do and a big time skill that we have to develop. And I say develop because, like almost everything, it's not something you're just good at. Some people might be more decisive than others, but some of that has to come with the confidence they have in making decisions or the belief they have in themselves, or also the belief they have that it's going to be okay either way so they can act more quickly. Because we always have to keep in mind that not making a decision is still making a decision, or not acting is making a decision. And so very often when we get anxious about making a decision, what we do is we do nothing and think, well, at least I'm doing nothing. But each time you're doing nothing, that moment, that minute, that day, that month is making a decision to not do that thing or to not make one of the two choices. So if they offer you a new job and you are thinking about it, but you're nervous about taking that new job, well, every day you don't take the job, you're deciding to not take it also. But people tend to go to the default of not changing. And so most people, when they're afraid of making decisions, afraid of making the wrong decisions, what they tend to do is avoid what they think is avoid making a decision, and instead they do nothing. And they just let things happen, sometimes to the point where then the decision makes itself because it's no longer available. So they say, hey, we can give you this new job in this new city. And they're nervous about it. They don't make a decision until it's no longer available. And in a way, they feel like, well, I just didn't make a decision. But you did make a decision not to act, not to take it. And also even to not, you could have rejected it very clearly too, but people almost rather take the decision out of their own hands by not thinking about it or not making the decision because they're not sure about making the right decision, or they don't trust themselves. So one aspect that I think is so important when it comes to this topic is for parents to give their kids opportunities to make decisions. Very often parents think, as I've talked about before, that they should employ what I call a pain prevention philosophy of parenting, meaning that if there is a situation and there can be some pain, discomfort, something that makes my child sad or unhappy, my job as a parent is to make sure they avoid that pain no matter what. And of course, when it's unnecessary pain, or when it's something severe, or when it's something that is just going to damage them, we should prevent that. But there's also pain that signifies growth or that creates growth. And when we actually stand in the way of that type of pain or discomfort, it's actually a lack of love. It's not doing a loving thing to do that. So if your child has to do homework and you say, because I don't want my child to feel uncomfortable, I'm going to do their homework for them and turn it in. That's not loving, even though you feel like I've done something to prevent some pain or discomfort. We have to take away that mindset that if I'm removing pain, it has to be a good thing. Oh, she doesn't like doing this, so I'm going to do it for her. Oh, he doesn't want to do this, I'm going to do that. Oh, he doesn't want to go present in front of class. I'm going to find a psychologist to write a note to say he doesn't like making presentations and something, and I'm doing such a good job because I'm preventing some kind of discomfort. Actually, we have to create the right type of discomfort that creates growth. In a way, push our kids, and of course this applies to ourselves as well, but push our kids to that edge of where they're comfortable and uncomfortable, where growth is made. We only grow in those areas where there's a little bit of discomfort. You have to get pushed out of the comfort zone. If you keep, let's say, playing the same song on the piano the same way, you'll never get better. You have to try something new techniques that at the beginning will be difficult, will be uncomfortable, will make you frustrated and annoyed, but that's where the growing comes. So when it comes to decisions, parents have to do the same thing, both in allowing their kids to make the decisions, giving them that space, and also allowing them to deal with the consequences so they learn from that. If we take away either one, we interfere with their development of decision making, because they have to first have the opportunity to make decisions. Some parents don't give them that. If they find out, oh, tomorrow you can go to this place or this place. Oh, you should go to this one. You like it more. You like this one more. It's easier. Let me just tell you what to do. That's taking away the decision. So let them think. They say, okay, this one I like to do this way, this one I like that, and they make a decision. So give them that opportunity to weigh the options, the pros and cons, how much the pros and cons matter in each case, and come to a decision. So first you have to give them opportunities to make decisions. But if we think that I have to avoid the pain, or if we worry too much about them, or if we also undermine them and want to make ourselves more important, we come in and we make all the decisions for them. And this is not an act of love. It's actually a lack of love. It's a lack of giving your children what they need. So we want to let them make the decisions. But then also we have to let them deal with the consequences of their decision. So, of course, it doesn't mean we just let them go and don't care what happens to them and don't care if they're suffering. But at times you have to let them feel some of the pain of the consequences that come with the decisions they make. They didn't study and now they have to take a test, and they say, "Oh, I don't think I'm ready, so just write me a note so I don't have to go to school." This puts the parent in a tough spot. They feel like, I don't want my kid to get upset. I also, sometimes parents can be so obsessed with grades that we get focused on the grades in the moment to moment and don't think about the big picture. So maybe the parent writes the note or just tells them stay home. Or you say, you know what, it was your decision last night. We knew you had the test and you wanted to play video games or you wanted to do whatever it was you did. So, you have to go face the consequence of this test and see what happens and learn from it. And so it might seem harsh or it might seem like you don't care about your child who's going to be in some kind of discomfort, but you're allowing them to learn from what happened. If I don't study, this is the consequence. It's not a punishment, it's the consequence of life. If you do something, there's a consequence. If you don't do something, there's a consequence of that as well. And so some parents might say, okay, let him make the decision the night before, but I'm going to take away the pain, the consequence of it. They're not going to learn that way. They have to actually experience it. And it's not a punishment as in you're adding something to it. It's just the reality of life. If you practice your times tables in math, you're going to get better at them. If you don't, you won't learn them. There's no way around it. It's not punishment that they're not learning it if they don't do it. It's just the consequence of life. So we have to allow them to face those consequences to see, you know what, it's okay, or I can learn from them. And then now I can learn what to do with those consequences. So again, now more decisions can be made. You know what, I didn't study enough for that test, and that's why it didn't go well. Next time, when I want to go play video games or be on my phone, but it's time to study, I have to think of a way to do that. And you might help them depending on their age with those decisions or with aspects of it. For example, they might say, Mom or Dad, I need you to take my phone from me for 1 hour. Or I'm going to put it in this table when I go to the other room to study for 1 hour. And then in 1 hour, can you come give it to me? And then I can get a break or whatever it is. And you might say, yeah, I'm going to help you in that way and support you, and give them that opportunity to learn from the consequences of the previous decisions as well. And they start to rely on themselves more and more, that I can make decisions. I can learn from the decisions and the consequences. I can handle the consequences. That's another thing. When we take away all the pain, it has that coddling effect that makes them feel like they can't handle anything. And that itself is bad, but show them they can. Okay, you got a bad test score, or the teacher was disappointed in you, or this happened or that happened, but you survived, you're okay. And now let's learn from it and move forward, and give them that reliance that they can make the decisions. And also something you're unspokenly giving them when you do this, letting them make decisions, is that you're telling them, I have the confidence in you to make the right decisions, and they slowly start to internalize that confidence. Unfortunately, what you see with a lot of, not just young adults, but especially I'll see this in my practice, a lot of young adults who weren't given the opportunity to make decisions because their parents said, do this, don't do that. They try to control everything in their lives. Now when it's time for them to make very important decisions in their lives, they don't trust themselves at all. They're faced with this enormous anxiety of, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Someone else make this decision for me, because my whole life I've been told I can't make the decisions myself. Someone has to make them for me. Someone has to tell me what to do. And that's really unfortunate when it comes time for young adults to make the important decisions in life, such as what to study, who to marry, or if they want to be married, having kids, and all the other big decisions they now have to make in their life. So in another way, we can think of this as when your kids have these smaller decisions, or the consequences are less significant, especially long term when they're younger, let that be their trial and error time. Let that be the time where they try things out, fail, learn from it, keep going, but build that confidence that I can make the decisions. This is my natural state, is making decisions for myself. I don't need to rely on someone else, ask someone else, or give it up to someone else to make the decision for me, because I don't know and they know better. I'm going to make those decisions for myself. And also related to that, at the end of the day, we can't make the decisions for someone else, because decisions have a lot to do with what feels right for us. We can't tell someone you should do this or should do that. You should be with this person or that person. Sometimes we can see things they can't, and that can be important for them. But a big part of what makes a good decision is how it's going to make us feel. And this is something last week when I had Dr. Jennifer Galvin, we talked about emotions, when we talked about emotional intelligence and how it often is downplayed as less important than being rational or logical or not as good or undermined, when really it's a big part of decision making. If something doesn't feel good to you when it's happening or in the long term, that's important. So if you're trying to pick a place to travel, I can't tell you what's the right place to go. If you don't like a beach destination, I say Hawaii is the best place. You have to go to Hawaii. You might not be very happy in Hawaii. I mean, you probably won't be too unhappy, but it might not be your best choice, whereas you might prefer something else. And so someone can't make that decision for you because a big part of the information that goes into making the choice comes from within you. Only you know what feels right for you, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. And that's when we talk about intuition or that gut feeling. Some of it is because it's within you. I can't tell you what's going on inside of you. I can't tell you what you're feeling about this or that. You can do that. And so that's why even when people go to therapy, they sometimes think, I want the therapist to tell me what to do in my life. Now, interestingly enough, very likely those people had parents that made all the decisions for them. Now the person is looking for a new person to make the decisions for them. But what will be best for that person in therapy is for the therapist actually not to make the decisions for them, to recognize the anxiety they have about making the decision, being empathic about that, showing them they care and understand that, but recognize that what's best for them is to help them to make the decision themselves, to recognize that there is something within you that's going to help you understand. I might help you, cut through the weeds a little bit and get to it if that's what you need, and guide you towards you. I'm not guiding you towards the right answer because I know it. I can only guide you towards what's within you, and that's for you to figure out. You can't make a decision for someone else in a lot of cases because only they can know what's going to feel right or be right for them. So we have to keep this in mind, that when people come to us at times and say, make this decision for me, of course you might give them some of your advice or guidance or wisdom or experience or expertise, depending on what the situation is. And we like to give the advice in a way that we know for sure what's right for them, that we know the truth. And it can feel good to have that feeling of someone coming to us and telling us to make the decision for them. But we want to resist that and recognizing that even if you know what's right for them in this case, which usually is not true, in the long term, what's going to happen if you're the one that makes the decisions for them? If they don't get to make the decision themselves, to see that they can make decisions, they can make right decisions. Everyone is going to get it wrong sometimes. No one's perfect. And so they can deal with that, live with that, and life moves on. But then they get to become the decision maker in their own life and no one else does it for them, which is ultimately what we should all want. All right, we're at the end of today's show. I wanted to announce again that on Wednesday's show, I'll be very happy to be joined by the author of the book, The Limits of Whiteness, Iranian Americans and the Everyday Politics of Race, Neda Makboulah. That's Wednesday at 12 p.m. Hope you'll be listening then. Thank you to the caller, and a big thank you to Amir here in the studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Have a wonderful night.